Hi, everybody. Welcome back to class. It's Mark, and today is Friday, September 23rd. This may be one of the shorter videos that I will record over the course of the semester, and that's because simply there's not as much work this week. I know that's not a disappointment to anyone, including me, but it's nice to have a shorter week every once in a while. Today we're going to jump into class session 6 and see what remains there. And we will be conducting peer response over your most recent draft essay. You'll also be getting feedback from me, but the whole point of this is to make sure that when you turn in the final version, it is as solid as possible. There is one quiz in this week on grammar, common sentence level problems. There's also a practice grammar activity, and as I've mentioned many times before, if you take the practice activity first and then jump directly into the quiz, you'll do great. There is one chapter in the textbook to be read, avoiding common problems in style, etc. And having read some of your drafts by now, I know that each of us could do a little better on grammar and style. And when you get feedback from me, I try to point those out to you. There are also two supplemental resources, links to Purdue OWL, which we've discussed before, and principles of peer response. Of course, if they're labeled as supplemental, that means you don't have to do them. You may be great on peer response and you can skip by this one. And we've talked about Purdue OWL before. So if you want to look at these, that's fine by me, but you're not required to. We are also finishing up session 5 and 6, Everyday Rhetorical Analysis. Those have been entertaining to read, and we're going to post responses. And that appears to be it. Let me go into the Learning Activities folder, and we'll see what's there. Of course, there's your textbook. There's the practice activity, and the two supplemental links. I'll also point out there's tutor.com. As I've mentioned before, it's a free resource that will proofread a paper for you and send it back in a very short period of time. So if you're anxious about turning in your final version, well, you're going to get feedback from me. You're going to get feedback from your peers in class. And if you turn it into tutor.com as well, you'll do great. Let's go into the assignments and assessments folder. As I mentioned, we're going to finish off the discussion on everyday rhetorical analysis. If you can, make sure that you give a response to someone who has no responses or very few responses. That way everyone's getting the same amount of feedback. Here is the quiz. Again, take the practice one first. And here is the discussion board on peer response of the first draft. And I see that there are 4 folks that have posted as of today, which is Friday, their draft and are looking for feedback. And as I've mentioned before, make sure that you're looking for somebody who hasn't received feedback already. That way, everyone's getting as many eyes as possible on what they have written. Excuse me. Of course, we'll be turning in the final version next week, but having read a couple of drafts so far on the previous writing project, I want to encourage everyone to make sure before you turn in your final version that you're using the F7 key, which is spell and grammar check. There were a couple of students, not everyone, that had a few silly mistakes that maybe they couldn't catch themselves. It is very, very difficult for anyone to read something that they have written and see the mistakes in the document. It takes a fresh set of eyes, whether that is a spouse, a partner, a boss, a coworker, another student, someone else will see things that you can never see. And it doesn't have to do with your writing skill. It just means that when you read something that you've written, your brain is going back and thinking about how you created it and your train of thought, and you just don't see your own mistakes. So it's very important that you get someone else to take a look at it. The first thing I do when I open up a final version is I hit the F7 key to run the spell and grammar check. Well, knowing that, because I just told you, it's very important that before you send it in, that final version, the last thing you should do is hit the F7 key to run the spell and grammar check. If you know I'm going to do it and you beat me to it by running it yourself, you're going to clean up any mistakes that have been there. The other thing I would point out is that citations for some of us are still a little bit of a struggle. They're not being formatted correctly. There's an abundance of resources out there that you can turn to that will make these lock solid. You can always use an outside resource such as citationmachine.net. You can always look at Purdue OWL, or you could even text me and say, I want to cite this source. I'm not exactly sure how it's supposed to look. Help me out. And of course, I will guide you through it. Anytime you want to stay in touch with me, the best way is by text 812-498-4200. If you want to send me an email, it's mstenger and the number 1 at ivytech.edu. If you want to call me, it's free. 800-416-1747. I welcome calls from students just about any time. Well, as I promised, this is going to be one of my shorter videos because we're just doing revision this week, not a lot of original writing, and that's okay. So let's stay in touch. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you around.